Welcome to Section 2 of the Course Design module, Backwards Design and Concept Mapping. We will begin this Section 2 of this module by looking at the backwards design model of course design. Now, backwards design is pretty much what it sounds like. It's basically starting from the end and working your way back to determine what learning activities and assessments are necessary to reach our goals. So we start looking at step 1 by identifying the desired results, so the objectives or goals. Now, we did this, of course, in the first section of this module. We made sure that we had written clear and concise objectives that made it very obvious what the actual goals were for our course or lessons. And once we've completed that and we have our clear goals, we can move on to step number 2, which is to determine acceptable evidence of learning. Now, the acceptable evidence of learning will vary based on what your objective or goal is, as well as what the format of the class is. So, for instance, you may determine that a student can prove they understood and learned the concepts presented to them by simply taking and passing a multiple choice quiz or exam online. Or maybe based on what the objective is, you determine that that student needs to do some research, write a paper, and give a presentation in order to prove that they understand the concepts. Whatever that acceptable evidence of learning is, you will put that down as step number 2 and move on to step number 3. In step number 3, we do the designing of the learning experiences and instruction. This is probably the most time-intensive step of the 3 because it's going to involve some sub-steps. First step, what instruction is needed? For instance, you may have a video lecture or a narrated PowerPoint, especially if you're teaching an online course. Or this would also refer to the lecture in class or any lectures they might view outside of class before coming to class. Also, what resources are needed? Now, this could be readings, maybe textbook readings, but also articles provided, videos, if you have extra videos outside of the video lecture, or any handouts or PDFs that you want them to have. From there, we look at what activities would allow the students the opportunities necessary to practice and apply the content. These are opportunities to play with or practice, not really high stakes situations here. We're looking at formative testing, low stakes quizzes, self-tests where they can test themselves, and then of course the learning activities, which goes into a whole long list of things. These are the activities that gives them opportunity to take what you gave them in the instruction or resources and practice it and learn how to apply it and make meaning for themselves. And then final, what is the best way to assess that the student has learned? Now, we may have already kind of figured this out in step 2, but there are certainly instances where you need a little more specific detail to determine what the assessment actually looks like. So, once you have done this, all 3 steps and then the sub-steps for each of your objectives, then you have a really good framework for what your course will look like. So in the next step, we're going to look at what concept mapping is and how you can use this backwards design in conjunction with the concept mapping to help lay out a really well organized framework for your course. In this next section, we're going to look a little closer at concept mapping and how it can help us to lay out our course in a visual way, allowing us to maybe see some of the gaps or redundancies that we might not have seen any other way. Now, in this section, you're going to be asked to complete 2 activities, one of which is the course concept map worksheet, where we're going to work through an idea of concept mapping. And then the other activity you'll be asked to do is to complete a discussion post back in the D2L module discussing the concepts that you learned here today. But let's start by looking at the course concept map worksheet. Now, this is the course concept map worksheet. Now, if you have not already printed this out, you may want to pause the video here, return back to the D2L module and find this worksheet, again titled Course Concept Map Worksheet PDF, there in the module contents. You can print that out and then return to the video for further instructions. Now once you have the worksheet printed out, we are going to take a look at the steps of completing it. As you'll see here at the top, there is a gray oval that says course or lesson title. Now the reason this says course or lesson title is that some of you will want to focus on your overall course objectives, while some of you may want to focus on an individual lesson or module of learning. So whichever you decide to focus on, put the title of that course or the module here in the gray oval. I'm going to cross over here to an example of what it looks like filled out. Okay, so you can see that I chose to do my overall course title as Intro to Biology. And then in the 4 ovals below, you will see the goals or objectives that were determined for this. In this instance, it's an overall course, so these are my overall course objectives. In the far left column, we will see identify basic biology terms, followed by discuss important topics in biology, analyze common biology events, and finally, create a presentation on biology topic. Of course, I am not a biology professor, so these are very vague and not at all specific as you may want them to be. But you will see that my objectives do show the Bloom's taxonomy verbs. The first one shows identify. The second is discuss. We have analyze and create, and they're written in a clear and concise way. So the next step, though, once you have your objectives entered, is to move down in the backwards design format. We're going to move down to the evidence of learning. So what evidence of learning do I need to know that the students are able to identify basic biology terms? Well, to me, a passing grade on an exam. Now, I'm not going into specifics here. Really, it could be an exam in a classroom, or it could be an exam online. It could be a written or a verbal exam. I'm not going into detail here yet. I just know that I need a passing grade on the exam as evidence of learning of this objective. So then I move to the next step, which would be the third step of the backwards design model, which is what information do the students need to get the information or content necessary. So I've determined that I need a video lecture, a textbook reading, and a couple of additional videos that I think are really necessary. And then finally, what activities or practice do I need to provide these students in order for them to play with the content or practice the content provided? So I've determined that for this particular objective, I would like to have a discussion board, a self-test, again a low stakes, a review activity, and then finally that graded quiz, which goes back to that evidence of learning. So that is one completed objective for my completely fictional biology class. So hopefully you understand how you are to complete this worksheet. So at this point, we would want you to work on your own worksheet. I'm going to put up the steps here of the backwards design model up here for you to reference while you complete your worksheet. So if you wish to just pause the video here, it'll sit on this page and you can use it for reference. And then when you're done with your worksheet, you want to move to the last and final slide to see the instructions or the guiding questions for the discussion activity you're going to be asked to complete. Once you have completed your course concept map worksheet, you can then move on to your discussion board activity. Now the discussion board will actually be found out in D2L in the module. So once you're done viewing this video, you'll want to look a little further down for the discussion activity titled Course Design Discussion. Let's look at what the guiding questions are going to be, because we want you to understand why we're asking you to do this. We're asking you to reflect on not only what content was provided to you and what concepts were given, but also want you to reflect on what you've learned. So the guiding questions you'll find in the discussion board will be as follows. First of all, throughout the activities you did in this session, what did you discover? Did you find anything missing from your course? Were there activities that weren't there? Did you need to add in some self-tests or low-stakes opportunities for the students to practice with the content? Was there an exam or a evidence of learning missing? Also, were there any activities that weren't needed or that was additional information that they really didn't need in order to meet the objectives? As faculty, sometimes we're really guilty of loving the content, loving the topic so much that we want to throw everything we have at our students. And we need to remember we've spent years and years and years gaining all of this knowledge on this topic, and a lot of times the students aren't ready and really don't need everything that we know. So we want to make sure that we're not only putting in things that are missing, but also taking out things that are really not required to meet those specific objectives that we wrote. So we want to know if you've came across anything like that. And then finally, what changes did you actually make to your course design as a result of the activity? Or if this is from start, what did you appreciate about this course design model as you move forward in the design of your course? So those are the guiding questions, and that's really the end of our lesson, of our module here. There's just one other thing we'll ask you to do once you've completed your discussion, and that is to take your final course concept map that you just completed in this last session and upload it into the assignments there in D2L. Now, we're not going to be looking this over really that close, but this is what we've determined as an evidence of participation, evidence of learning on this concept. So if you could just take your completed course concept map and upload it, again, once you leave this video, you will find that assignment there listed down in the module contents. Well, we're really glad that you decided to spend some time with us learning about good course design, whether that was learning about the Bloom's levels of learning, the objectives, the action verbs, backwards design, or concept mapping. We're really, really thrilled that you came and spent this time with us. We hope you got some really valuable information out of it, and we hope to hear from you in that discussion board. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to always reach out to anyone on the CETL team. We're happy to answer your questions.